Hello, Dr. Sushma Singh this side. Today in Unit 3 Village Studies in India, we are going to conclude this unit. The studies of Indian village carried out by social anthropologists during the 1950s and 60s were undoubtedly an important landmark in the history of Indian social sciences. Even though the primary focus of these studies was on the social and ritual life of the village people, there are enough references that can be used pointers towards an understanding of the political and economic life in the rural society of India during the first 2 decades of independent India. More importantly, these studies helped in contesting the dominant stereotype of the Indian village made popular by the colonial administrators. The detailed descriptive accounts of village life constructed after prolonged field works carried out in most cases entirely by the anthropologists themselves convincingly proved how Indian villages were not isolated communities. Village studies show that Indian villages had been well integrated into the broader economy and society of the region even before the colonial rule introduced new agrarian legislation. They also pointed to the regional differences in the way social village life was organized in different parts of the country. Social anthropological studies also offered an alternative to the dominant book view of Indian construction constructed by Indologists and Orientalists from the Hindu sculptures. The field view presented in the village monograms not only contested the assumption of ideology but also convincingly showed with the help of empirical data as to how the idealized model of Varna system as theorized in Hindu sculptures did not match with the concrete realities of the village life. While caste was an important institution in the Indian village and most studies foregrounded caste differences over other differences, empirical studies showed that it was not a completely closed and rigidly defined system. Caste statuses were also not exclusively determined by one's position in the ritual hierarchy, and there were many grey and contestable areas within the system. It was from the village studies that the concepts like Sanskritization, dominant caste, segmental structures, harmonic and disharmonic systems emerged. However, village studies were also constrained by a number of factors. The method of participant observation that was the main strength of these studies also imposed certain limitations on the field workers, which eventually proved critical in shaping the image they produced of the Indian village. During participant observation required a measure of acceptability of the field worker in the village that he or she chose to study. In the differentiated social context, it was obviously easy to approach the village through the dominant section. However, this choice proved to be more than just a strategic value. The anxiety of the anthropologist to get accepted in the village as a member of community made their accounts of the village life conservative in orientation. It also limited their access to the dominant group in the local society. They chose to avoid asking all those questions or approaching those subordinate groups which they thought could offend the dominant interest in the village. the choices made by individual anthropologists about how they were going to negotiate their own relationship with the village significantly influenced the kind of data they could gather about the village life. Unlike the tribal communities, the conventional subject matter of social anthropology, Indian villages were not only internally differentiated much more than the tribes, they also had well articulated worldviews. Different sections of the village society had different perspectives on what the village was. Though most of the anthropologists were aware of this, they did not do much to resolve this problem. On the contrary, most of them consciously choose to identify themselves with the dominant caste group in the village, which, apart from making their stay in the village relatively easy, limited their access to the worldview of the upper caste and made them suspect among the lower castes. Apart from the method of participant observation and the anxiety about being accepted in the rural society that made the anthropologist produce a conservative account of the rural social relations, the received theoretical perspective and the professional traditional dominant within the disciplines of sociology and social anthropology during the time of village studies also had their influences on these scholars. Anthropologists during the decade of the 50s and 60s generally focused on the structures rather than the changes. This preoccupation made them look for the sources that reproduced social order in the village and to ignore conflict and the possible sources of the social transformation. Here we want to close this lecture, and we have come to the end of the lecture and unit. Thanks for listening.